without the ESA, 1,445 species could be extinct. Good morning. My name is Justine Rylander. I'm an attorney for the Defenders of Wildlife. My goal here today is to explain the importance of the Endangered Species Act and help you develop the understanding of what the ESA has done and will do for our next generations. One of the main purposes of the Endangered Species Act is to provide a place in our ecosystem where threatened species and endangered species may be conserved. One of the leading causes of species extinction is habitat destruction. Species that have a designated critical habitat are twice as likely to recover than those that do not have a designated critical habitat. This shows that we need to designate a certain area for species to reproduce and regain population. Also, species that are put on the endangered species list have a 99% chance of escaping extinction. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, only 9 of the approximately 1,445 species have ever become extinct. This proves the ESA is actually working.
Sure, this act is protecting animals, but I am protecting the people. My name is Karen Fallon, and there is one way of looking at the cost of critical habitat designation. That way is to look at what it costs the federal government to decide what critical habitat is. According to a study published in the Federal Register by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on November 10, 2010, it costs $305,000 to go through the process to designate the critical habitat for a species. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agreed that with the Center for Biological Diversity and the Wild Earth Guardians that they would decide whether to list or to designate the critical habitat for 1,053 different species. The cost of going through this process would be $208 million over 5 years. In these tough economic times, I question the wisdom of spending $208 million on the designation of critical habitat. On top of that, Ms. Rylander, only 11 species have successfully made it off the list. If the list worked the way it was supposed to, more species would have been recovered.
Is cost really a factor when it comes to protecting these endangered species? My name is Taylor Jones, and I'm an endangered species advocate from Wild Earth Guardians. Critical habitat designation, like listing, should be primarily based on the best available science, with every effort made to conserve the natural features that the species need to survive. Under ESA regulations, the service should consider features that are both essential to conservation and that may require special management or protection. These features may include space for population growth and normal behavior, food and shelter, nesting or denning sites, and specific soil types for plants. Critical habitat should be designated, always keeping recovery in mind. In dealing with regulations, the federal government can only make rules about situations where the private landowner is working together with the government. Therefore, a landowner can do just about anything they want on their own property, even if it is designated as critical habitat. There's a famous quote from John Moore: "If you pull one thing in nature, you find it is connected to everything else." This certainly rings true about species at risk of extinction.
I hardly agree that landowners can do whatever they want with the critical habitat present. My name is Mark Isley, and I'm the owner and operator of the King Ranch, located in southeastern Wyoming, and currently serve as the Wyoming Stockgrowers President. These listings are severely affecting my ranch and other ranches around the state of Wyoming. The Prebles Meadow Jumping Mouse is a threat to my operation as it was relisted in 2008. In designating my land, it would cost me 30% of my operation through the loss of hay fields, weaning pastures, and calving pastures. We feed our own hay, so the loss of hay and cattle would cost me close to $200,000. My ranch also has the presence of the Colorado butterfly plant, which is also listed. This plant thrives on cutting and flood irrigation. Farmers and ranchers are stewards of the land, and these species are in more danger by environmental groups than they are by agriculturalists. Agriculturalists provide habitat for these species. The only thing environmental groups do is sue the federal government.
Let's rethink this, Mr. Isley. My name is Karen Suckling, and I'm the founder and executive director for the Center for Biological Diversity. I maintain the country's most comprehensive endangered species database. When considering how critical habitat should be designated under the Endangered Species Act, one should look at the primary constituent elements. You already heard Ms. Taylor Jones discuss the specifications for designation of critical habitat. You must cover all of the places it needs to survive. Think about your critical habitat being your own home. Things that are essential to your survival would be well-stocked fridge, a comfortable bed, clean clothes, and a bathroom. In 2007, a formal notice to the Department of Interior and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was issued because they violating the listing and critical habitat provisions for 55 different species. Among them was the Preeble's meadow jumping mouse. The amount of acreage provided for protection was reduced from 57,446 to a mere 31,222 acres. This is unlawful and unjust. How can we trust our own government to protect these endangered species when they keep violating the act to protect these wealthy corporate ranchers? Stewards of the land? I don't think so.
Since 2003, there have been many animals placed on the endangered species list, such as the Preeble's meadow jumping mouse. Critical habitat designation has caused numerous problems with local agriculture. My name is Teresa Folk, head of the Agriculture Economics Program at the University of Wyoming. When designating critical habitat for endangered species, we're jeopardizing the well-being of the agriculture economy. In the specific case of the Preeble's meadow jumping mouse, when critical habitat was defined in 2003 in the area of southeastern Wyoming, 10,000 acres and 125 miles of rivers and streams were designated as critical habitat. The real issue here is that 88% of this habitat was on private lands, 94% of which was used directly in vital agriculture. These lands weren't just private, they were vastly riparian areas used for vital agriculture, such as cow-calf and hay operations. Ranchers, much like Mr. Isley himself, depend heavily on these lands for their operations. When critical habitat is defined, there's no statute to protect the economy, but there is a statute protecting the endangered species. The government may be required to look into the economic risk, but no action is required. You just heard Mr. Isley talk about the effects on his operation. Imagine the effects on a small community of family-owned and operated ranches.
Ms. Rylander, do you believe that the benefits of critical habitat designation are enough to overlook the cost?
I believe that critical habitat designation outweighs the cost that it takes to designate a certain area. Because again, when a critical habitat is designated for a certain species, they are twice as likely to recover as if they did not have critical habitat designation. The benefits definitely outweigh the costs.
Ms. Rylander, I don't think that you understand that the cost is much more than it seems. What is more important, protecting this little mouse or not going into debt deeper as a country? The people who pay for the $208 million is the general public. The general public includes the government, the tax-paying citizens, and especially the landowners. Because not only do the landowners have to pay their taxes, but they have to pay the price of all of their operations being shut down. They lose their money and their way of life.
Cost cannot be the only factor that we look at here. What about the innocent animals? Ms. Fallon, when you say that you're protecting the landowners, what are you actually doing? Maybe there's a section of the Endangered Species Act that you've overlooked. It's called the 4D rule and specifically extends private landowners from a lot of other restrictions on harming the species. So, for example, with the Preeble's meadow jumping mouse, if your house cat were to catch and eat a Preeble's mouse, you couldn't and wouldn't be held liable.
Well, Miss Jones, this 4D rule may protect your house cat, but it doesn't protect everyday life, such as mowing a lawn. Also, these private, well-managed lands protect the species better than unmanaged lands. So modification to this critical habitat also equates to harm to your endangered species.
These so-called agriculturists could care less about these endangered species. Accidental killings? Yeah, right. These wealthy corporate ranchers will do anything it takes to get these species off their land at any cost to the environment. All they care about is producing as much as they can, any way they can, so they can make their money. How can we compare that cost to the cost of the lives of these endangered species? Americans grossly overconsume as it is, so picking a helpless species on the brink of extinction makes a whole lot more sense than producing one more greasy hamburger.
Excuse me, Miss Eklund. I am a landowner, and I'm the farthest thing from a wealthy corporate rancher. My practice is protect these species by improving the habitat situation. Unlike these so-called environmental groups, I am forced to protect these species when my operation is shut down. The cost certainly outweighs the benefits. It could cost me my ranch and my livelihood. We need to educate with facts, not falsified accusations.
Falsified accusations?
Well, folks, I guess for now the question will have to go unanswered regarding the designation of critical habitat and these considerations presented today. Now that we have heard each individual testify argument, let's take a closer look and hear some of the testimony that we heard thus far. Today you heard from attorney Ms. Justine Rylander, who argued the benefits of the Endangered Species Act in correlation with designated critical habitat. Ms. Rylander stated that when designating critical habitat, the endangered species are twice as likely to recover and replenish. She also emphasized the vitality of the endangered species list and the 99% likelihood of escaping extinction. Attorney Ms. Karen Budd Fallon discussed how the Endangered Species Act is willing to protect these endangered animals. However, they are intransigent to recognize how cost is a primary factor in these litigations being made for critical habitat designation. Ms. Taylor-Jones stressed the importance of always keeping recovery in mind when designating critical habitat, and that under ESA regulations, the service should consider features that oversee special management and protection that are both essential as well as beneficial to the conservation of the species. Mr. Mark Isley emphasized the negative effects of critical habitat designation and the misleading potential of the service to confiscate Mr. Isley of his livelihood and ranching operation. Mr. Isley also stated that ranchers are stewards of the land and they provide for the habitat rather than destroy it. Ms. Karen Suffing argued the benefits of critical habitat designation and protects the primary constituent elements that the species need to survive. She also argued in defense against the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, violating the ESA for 55 different species. Ms. Teresa Folk discussed the importance of private land management and how private well-managed lands protect the endangered species better than private unmanaged lands. She also stated that there is no statute protecting the economy or individual family operations, but there is a statute protecting the endangered species. The government may be required to look into the economic risk, but no action is required. Now stop and think for a moment. What considerations do you think should be included in the designation of critical habitat? We argue,
You decide.